Welcome to the deep dive. We unpack fascinating sources, really trying to get to the heart of what matters. And today, we're taking a really profound plunge into a true literary monument, Miguel de Cervantes' Don Quixote.
Yeah.
Published way back in two parts, 1605 and 1615. It's not just any book. It's widely seen as one of the greatest literary works ever. Foundational, really, for the modern novel. So our mission today, looking at this great review summary you've brought in, is to explore why this classic still works, its insights, and why it feels so relevant even now. Your sources point to its humor, its depth, and its pretty unique narrative style.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating, and the summary hits this well, is how Cervantes just masterfully blends the completely absurd with some really deep wisdom. At its core, right, Don Quixote follows this middle-aged guy. He's kind of driven to delusion from reading too many chivalry novels, so he reinvents himself as a noble knight-errant. And along with his squire, the very pragmatic Sancho Panza, he sets out to bring back these forgotten knightly virtues. But the world's moved on, you know? So you see him imagining inns or castles, windmills or giants. It leads to these adventures that are somehow both hilarious, almost tragicomic, but also profoundly insightful.
Okay, let's unpack that blend then, the absurdity and the wisdom.
Yeah.
Your sources really hammer home its main strength, the satire and the humor. But it's not just making fun of medieval romance, is it? It feels like an homage too, somehow.
Okay.
Packed with witty talk and irony.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's both. Think about that classic scene, fighting the windmills. He genuinely believes they're monsters, and Cervantes uses that, sure, to lampoon those old, often silly chivalric tales. But there's also underneath a kind of fondness for that spirit, you know. The adventure, the idealism, a lot of the humor comes from that clash, right? Quixote's grand, imagined world versus Sancho's very earthy peasant view, which, surprisingly often, holds real wisdom.
Right. And that clash dreams versus reality, which is so key to Quixote himself, that takes us to the deeper philosophical stuff your sources mentioned. This is where it gets really thought-provoking for you, listening in.
Exactly. The novel sort of pushes us to ask, is it actually better to live in a delusion if it gives your life meaning, maybe nobility, or should you face a kind of harsh, disillusioned reality? Quixote's madness, sure, it leads to funny mistakes, but it also gives him this incredible sense of purpose. Which raises a big question for us today, doesn't it? Can one person's madness actually be someone else's deepest meaning? It forces you to think about the realities we kind of build for ourselves.
Your review also highlights the narrative style, calls it groundbreaking, self-aware, breaking the fourth wall sometimes, these layered, almost metafictional bits. How radical was that back then?
Oh, hugely radical. I mean, when we talk about metafictional, we mean the story knows it's a story. In part 2 of Don Quixote, the characters have actually read part 1. It's amazing. They talk about Quixote's fame, his earlier adventures. They even criticize this other fake part 2 someone else wrote. That blurring of lines between the fiction and the reality inside the story, totally unprecedented and incredibly modern. It really invites you, the reader, to think about storytelling itself.
Okay, so it's clearly essential reading for anyone into classic literature, philosophy, satire. But your sources do mention some, let's say, challenges for new readers. What should you be ready for?
Yeah, well, the length, that's the big one. It can be daunting. Part I is, over 900 pages in some versions. And Cervantes sometimes puts in these other stories, novellas, that seem kind of unrelated, that can feel a bit repetitive, maybe slow things down, though often they actually echo the main themes, so they do add richness. Also, the original Spanish is complex. That's why choosing a really good translator, someone like Edith Grossman is often recommended, is so important. A good translator doesn't just swap words. They capture the spirit, the wit. They make those older cultural references kind of land for us today, so the humor doesn't get lost.
Right. So what's the takeaway for you? Don Quixote is clearly much more than just some old novel. It's this literary landmark, really, blending humor, heart, and these deep thoughts about human nature. It's a journey, kind of, that challenges how you see things, the reality you build.
And the rewards, if you stick with it, are huge. It's one of those books you can keep coming back to and finding new things. It really pushes you to look at your own idealism, your own pragmatism.
We really hope this deep dive gets you interested in exploring this timeless classic.
Yeah. And maybe a final thought to chew on. If Don Quixote found such meaning in his, grand illusions, what necessary fictions, or maybe just perceived realities, might we be living with today that give our own lives purpose? And are they actually worth holding on to?